You gotta love that music. It already feels like Saturday. The Big Ten on CBS. Iowa making the trip to Columbus, taking on number 3 Ohio State. Ohio State boasting emerging star 18-year-old wide receiver Jeremiah Smith wants to be the best receiver to ever come out of the university. LeBron James tweeting about this guy. Meanwhile, Iowa with running back Caleb Johnson, who's already making offensive history. Let's welcome in Josh Pate and Tom Fornelli here. Kirk Ferentz is going after his 200th win with the Hawkeyes. It is going to be a very tall task as Ohio State is double-digit favorites in this one. Josh, we'll start with you. Get us ready for Saturday.
Amanda, people are going to tell you that this is the Saturday before the Saturday before the Saturday, which means terrible, terrible things could happen this Saturday. This is just one of those games. It's a game where, if we're being real, and this is the trust tree, so we can all be honest with each other, not many people have watched Ohio State. They've watched highlights of Jeremiah Smith. They know what they thought about him in the preseason. We've watched him because we watch everything, but most people are going to tune in for the first time. And it's a big game, and they're favored by double digits, and they'll probably win. These are the kinds of games, though, and Thomas, you know this as well as I do. These are the kind of games where fans, even in a win, maybe a cover, they see things tested about their team for the first time. They get water applied to the dam for the first time. There may be a crack here, crack there, and all of a sudden we freak out on the message board afterwards. Now, that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is Ole Miss against Kentucky. Just disaster strikes and you lose outright. I'm excited to watch it because it's finally a better test athletically on a defensive side against Ohio State, so we start to learn some stuff.
Yeah, I think you just touched on it at the very end. It's like when you've watched Ohio State this year, the first 3 games of the season were pretty much glorified scrimmages against teams that they were just simply better than at every single spot on the field. So there wasn't much to take away. And then I was hoping last week on the road against Michigan State, maybe we would find out a little bit more about who these Buckeyes are. And they didn't play well, and they ended up winning by over 30 anyway. So I do think in this spot against an Iowa defense that historically has been one of the better units in the Big Ten year in and year out, we will finally get a glimpse of this Ohio State offense, maybe, having to deal with some resistance. That said, if we look at Iowa on defense so far this year, the numbers are great, but what's the best offense the Hawkeyes have faced? Iowa State or Minnesota? I'll let you decide. So there's still a lot to learn about both of these teams. I wrote last week about Caleb Johnson and how spectacular he's been at running back for the Hawkeyes. He's one of the most explosive players in the country. The problem is he's really been the only thing Iowa has consistently on offense. So you're going up against an Ohio State defense that is very good. If they're able to limit Caleb Johnson and what he does Iowa have a counter? That's the one thing I'm not sure about going into this week.
Very interesting. Our guy from Iowa, Chris Hassel, his wife wanted to go to Vermont to see the leaves change, and he took her this past weekend because it was Iowa's bye week, and he needed to be ready for this game.
Come on,
which I think is unfair because the leaves have not changed in Vermont yet. Let's go to another game coming up this week in the Big Ten, a rematch of the national championship. We get Michigan and Washington State, Washington, not Washington State, going up against one another. Look, these teams met 267 days ago. These are vastly different teams. The line is still small. It's about 2.5 here. Josh, what are you looking for in this game?
Like a billboard for the transfer portal era. It's a billboard for like college coaching churn. This is insanity that you just reminded me of this. I wasn't even thinking about this game as a rematch of the national title. I'm trying to immerse myself in this stuff. So everyone's freaked out, Amanda, that Michigan is the defending national champion, whatever that means, and they are going up there and they're a 2 to 2.5 point dog. And I've got people like, as we've been on air right now, there was a DM. I was looking at my phone over here. Can you explain to me why we are a dog up at Washington? And the answer is, well, in odds makers' opinions, there's not that much separation between these teams. And I'm really interested because we've seen Michigan a couple of times already. Washington, they had this dogfight with Washington State, and they just went and played what I think is a top 25 caliber team in Rutgers and lost really close, really late. And so they're anonymous. And I mean, Jed Fish at Big Ten Media Days, he was asked, hey, what's your biggest challenge? He said, rebuilding a roster. Like he started at the most foundational point imaginable. This should be a really, really fun game to watch because Michigan, even at their best right now, Tom, They don't have pull-away ability. Michigan's best strategy is we're going to walk a tightrope all game, and then physically, hopefully, it works in our favor in the end. So it should be a really, really back-and-forth affair. Let's
look at an undefeated team, Indiana, right now, sitting at 5-0. That's their longest winning streak since 1987. Right now, they're number 23 in the AP rankings. However, they are going up against Northwestern. They're a big favorite in this game. About 13.5, I think, is the line. I can't really read because I don't have my glasses on. But Tom, what could be standing in their way from going 6-0?
I mean, this is a tough spot in that you're going on the road and you're facing a team that has been good defensively to this point in the season. So it's probably a bigger challenge than you faced. Like last week at home against Maryland. Maryland's a good team. It's probably on the same kind of level as Northwestern, except it's better offensively. But you had that in the comforts of home. You had a packed house cheering for you. It's not going to be the same situation this weekend. So when you look at what Indiana has accomplished, like you look at that schedule and you can argue, okay, they haven't really been tested. Like outside of a road trip to UCLA, that's still not a very good team to this point of the season. But at some point, it doesn't really matter who you're playing as much as it's how you're playing and whether or not people want to pick apart their schedule. Indiana thinks it's a very good football team. It's going out there every weekend and beating up its opponents. So going on the road this weekend to face Northwestern, I think this is a very confident team. And I do think that the Hoosiers can win this game and take advantage of the schedule. We just mentioned Josh, the transfer portal for Washington and how Jet Fish had to completely overhaul his roster. It's different for Indiana because Kurt Signetti comes from James Madison, and he brings most of his roster with him, and then he lands an excellent quarterback in Curtis Rourke from Ohio. So this team just kind of hit the ground running and has gelled immediately, and there's just such a buy-in in the locker room, and they're all kind of pulling in the same direction, which is what you need to do to be successful. So as I look at this Hoosiers team, yeah, it's going to be a tough test for them going against this Northwestern defense, but based on what I have seen from them so far this year, I think it's Northwestern who's got the far bigger challenge in their face than Indiana does at this point.
We get another undefeated team going on the road, but this test this test is a lot tougher, I would say. Rutgers 4-0 going up against a 4-1 Nebraska team. The atmosphere there, it's going to be crazy, Josh. You get a quarterback who's been living up to his hype. And not only that, Rutgers has never beaten Nebraska. They have lost 6 games against them. What are the chances they could pull the upset here?
Are you ready to live in a world where Rutgers is undefeated in October? Because I'm ready to live in that world. I think they need to pull the upset here, obviously. This is not a shot-for-shot remake of the Illinois game that Nebraska lost a couple of Fridays ago, but I think stylistically it'll be similar in that it's a team that not only is comfortable bloodying your mouth, they relish in that idea. They want to pull the game out into that deep end of the pool. Nebraska's just got to be ready for that. Nebraska got a taste of this a couple of weekends ago. I'm sure they have kicked themselves ever since, knowing there were 47 different ways we could have won that Illinois game. Well, that's not the way the sport works. There's no rewind button, but what you can do is you can be favored again against a Rutgers team that's kind of upstart. Rutgers just beat Washington by 2 this past week. We don't truly know what quality of win that is. It may be that, Washington goes on to beat Michigan this Saturday and we say, oh, Rutgers beating them. It shines a lot more in retrospect. I have this vision in my head, Amanda, a couple of Fridays from now, and it may be a little fanatical, but I have this vision in my head of an undefeated Rutgers going into the Coliseum on a Friday night to face USC. Because that's a real thing that could happen in college football in 2024 right now. So I'm not saying I'm rooting for this. I actually love Nebraska in the game. However, if I don't get my way, it's sort of a win-win. I've hedged happiness a little bit here because it does keep us on track for what would be a marquee game that no one saw coming about a month ago.
It's hard to imagine we would call that a marquee game, but we could very well be seeing it there. Thomas Fornelli, Tom, I know you hate being called Tommy, found that out last week. We're going to give you the business of the Big Ten. Purdue fires their OC. What other coaches could be on the hot seat right now?
Yeah, I think that if you look at the Purdue situation, clearly things have not gone well in Ryan Walters' first season and a half in charge, particularly this year where the Boilermakers scored 49 points in their opener against Indiana State and they've scored 38 in 3 games since. So the changes on the offensive side of the ball, not a huge shock, but I also think that if you're Ryan Walters, you still need to have some kind of turnaround this year or else you could find yourselves in the firing line. But elsewhere in the conference, Mike Locksley, he's in his 6th year at Maryland. A lot of the talk going into this season was with the Terps getting out of the Big Ten East. They're finally free of having to play Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State every year, which is true, but they're 0-2 in the Big Ten, and their 2 losses have come at home to Michigan State and then last week to Indiana, which are 2 of the teams that if you're a Maryland fan, you feel like you're supposed to be beating. So at this point, even if you take away his record as 1-5 as the interim coach at Maryland in 2015, the Terps are 14-29 in Big Ten play under Mike Locksley, which is, winning fewer than a third of your games. I wonder if things keep heading that way, if he could be in trouble. And then we'll go to Minnesota, PJ Fleck. It's another thing where it's like you're wondering if it's run its course. He's in his 8th year there. They're off to a slow start, and since the beginning of last season, they're only 3-8 in conference play. If they don't turn things around down the home stretch, you kind of wonder if either both sides might just start looking around to see if there's a better situation for them.
I still think if I had a boat, I would name it PJ Fleck because I think that's fitting. Guys, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Josh, what have you got coming up on your show?
I'm just going to talk about Amanda's boat choices. That's all we're talking about tonight.
Thanks, Josh. A lot more. I guarantee you he will not talk about that at all. But a lot of good content there from Josh Pate and all of his Pate State followers.